All right. How many of you have ever heard the story about the monkey who gets his hand caught in the jar? If you haven't heard of it, there's this hunting, people who hunt monkeys, which I'm not one of them, but people who do, they use this principle where they get a container that has a big enough hole for a monkey to stick his hand down in. But anytime he closes his fist, he can't get it back out. And generally, you put something in there that the monkey wants, like bananas or food or something. And then what happens is, while the monkey doesn't want to let go of the food, that's whenever you pick him off. And so I was thinking about that whenever I read this proverb, this section of Proverbs. It's about 4 verses that kind of go together really well with this principle. But let's turn to Proverbs chapter 11. We're going to look at verses 23 to 26. And this morning, I want to challenge you to risk being generous in everything that you do. Risk being generous in everything that you do. Let's read starting at verse 23. The desire of the righteous ends only in good, the expectation of the wicked in wrath. One gives freely, yet grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give, and only suffers want. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and the one who waters will himself be watered. The people curse him who holds back grain, but a blessing is on the head of him who sells it. As we look at these few verses today, there's not a lot of text, but there's a whole lot to learn from what's there. We're going to see today that generosity is the way of the Bible. It is the way that we are supposed to live. The first thing I want to tell you today, I want to challenge you to risk being generous for your own benefit. Risk being generous for your own benefit. The first thing we see in verse 23 is a principle. It's a principle that we see often in the Proverbs. It's the righteous versus the wicked. Which one is better? In the Proverbs in the Bible, always the righteous prevails. The wicked are talked about, and sometimes they're viewed as being prevailing for a time. But in the end, the righteous always prevail. It says that the desire of the righteous ends only in good. In other words, the righteous only seek good things. Their whole world is wrapped up in good. They think on good things. They act in good ways. And their heart is always for good things. They seek those things out. But the righteous, on the other hand, they have hopes. They have expectations. But the expectations and hopes rest in something that is evil. And so the text is unclear whether they are frustrated because they don't get the evil that they want, or whether God is frustrated because they continuously try to do evil over and over and over again. Let me step on your toes a little bit this morning and ask you to gauge yourself. On an average, because every one of us have good days and bad days, every one of us do good things and bad things, but on an average, is it your second nature to be righteous or wicked? Are you moving in the direction of righteousness, or are you sliding toward wickedness? We continue on with verse 24, and here we see a paradox, a thing that doesn't seem to make sense, but in reality is really, really true. It says that one person gives freely, yet grows all the richer. The idea here of giving freely, the idea in the Hebrew word here is actually speaking about farming issues. It's talking about sowing seed. And so when a farmer would sow seed, he would just throw it out there. You know, Jesus kind of talks about this in his parables of the seed. You know, he kind of just throws it along and it lands in different places. And so the idea of sowing the seed is that it seems like some of it is a waste. You know, you can only buy so much seed. And then whenever you sow it all, it seems a waste to sow it on a land that will not harvest anything at all. And so in our minds, naturally we believe that we don't want to waste anything, so we keep it all to ourselves. And we hoard it in. That's why I entitled my message, Open Fist. Because we love to hold things, but we need to let them go. But what we have is, when we get to the harvest time, all that seed that was sown produces a harvest greater than itself. So there's a paradox. He sows a lot, but he reaps a lot more. So there's not much risk, is there, in being generous? In fact, there's gain. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. Hey, we know this all too well. I'm going to use money as an example, and then I'm going to make fun of old people. First, money. We know this. As soon as you buy anything, what happens? It immediately is worth less than what you paid that cashier. Call it depreciation. Deficits. Most of us in this room have loans, but on top of that, most of us have deficits that are greater than our assets. Maybe Dr. O's back there, who's really, rich, maybe he doesn't, but most of us do. And in case that doesn't hit you where the rubber meets the road, people get old. Things stop working. Depreciation, except in a physical sense. The point is, because we live in this type of atmosphere, we love to hoard things. If I were to say to you, I want to give this to you, the question that's happening in my mind is I'm thinking, did I lose something or did I gain a lot more later? A lot of times, even if the number is 0, we think 10 minus 0 equals 10 instead of 10 plus 0 equals 10. We always tend to think in the negative. So let me ask you, just as a point of application, do you think more about the negative consequence or the positive consequence when you're giving? Do your kids learn the word no before they learn the word yes? Most do. We are taught from infant age to go negative before we go positive. That's why it's so hard to risk generosity, because we're built the other way around. But the Bible's calling for us to do a 180 and start thinking about all the things that will be gained when we give. I want to stress, I'm not talking about money here today. I'm talking about everything. Remember, risk generosity in everything that you do. Whoever brings blessing will be enriched, and one who waters will himself be watered. There's a reward for your generosity. At some point, you're going to get something back. Now, we know this principle too, don't we? How many of you in here have done something nice for somebody without them knowing about it? Probably a lot of you. How'd you feel after you did something nice for them? Feel pretty good. It's part of the natural law that you feel good about doing things for others. And I believe that God put that in us for a specific reason. Just as there are rules that we grow up in where we think more negatively than positively, there are also rules that are part of us. Like we really do enjoy and feel good about helping others out. The question is, which law will you obey first? Will you think more negatively first, or will you think, I get a lot more out of helping people out? The text here, whenever it talks about being enriched, that in Hebrew is literally grow fat. Grow fat. I see a lot of skinny people. No, I'm just kidding. But to grow fat means to be enriched. The one who waters will himself be watered. The word for water there, the idea is an intensive watering, a lavish watering, watering more than could ever possibly be needed. And so you can kind of think of what Jesus has said in the New Testament. With the measure you use, it will be given back to you. But we see this reciprocal principle again. Pressed down, shaken together, and running over. It's worth risking generosity because there's greater gain for you. Let's look at this final verse. Not only do you want to risk for your own benefit, risk for other people's benefit. Risk for their benefit. Because what we see here is the principle is now applied to an example in a community. The people curse him who holds back grain, but a blessing is on the head of him who sells it. Well, we see the principle here is this guy who holds back things, it's connected to the idea that there's an agreement that he'll help others out, and he reneges on his agreement. He decides that he's not going to do that because of a time of, say, famine, where there isn't much anyway. And so instead of being generous, like he said he would be, his character shows its true nature. And he reneges on his agreements. Let me ask you today, do you renege on your agreements? A lot? A little? Maybe not? Don't think of it as a discipline, okay? We're not talking about being disciplined to always do what you said you're going to do. Although that's important. Let me think of it this way with you. A spirit of generosity is cultivated when we don't renege on our agreements. When we give of ourselves, our time, our money, whatever our resources, there is only gain to be had. It's worth the risk. Now, this guy, he decides not to help these people. Just talking human nature, what do you think happens? Well, maybe a couple months later, this guy's in need. Guess what happens when he goes to the community and says, I need this that everyone else has? Guess what they're going to remember? This guy didn't help them out when they needed it. In basic human nature, he's going to be left out in the dust. We can see this kind of principle even right here in Springfield. The ice storm of 2007, the ice storm left a lot of damage. And the two things that were needed the most, generators for producing electricity, because most people in the city were left without power for up to 3 or 4 weeks, maybe even longer than that. That's a long time. So people needed generators. They also needed chainsaws to clear up their yards and to get all the wires taken out of, because all the trees had fallen on the wires and just smushed them. Those two things in Springfield were being sold at double, triple, and quadruple the price that they are normally sold at. You think people will remember that the next time they need something from those store owners? Being generous in a community, especially when it's needed, gains you a better reputation. Because people look back on things and they say, hey, I remember that guy helped me out. And he risked things to help me out. I think I could do the same thing for him. And so we see this principle being applied to the community at large. Everybody benefits when everybody is ready to be generous. So we see here that this good reputation, it's something worth gaining, isn't it? And let me ask you, what do your neighbors think of you? Boy, this is a rubber meets the road question. Would your neighbors, if I walked up to them and said, what do you think about Kenny Helmer? What kind of guy is he? Would they tell me, oh, you won't believe it, just the other day, I had 5 bags in my hand, and this man runs over and he grabs 2 of them. Or will they say, I wish he was somebody else's neighbor? Let me ask you. Rubber meets the road. Think about it. This is the hardest part. I told you that we're born into this negative approach to giving. We're also born into America, where materialism, individualism, I got my rights, ownership. That might be the biggest one of all. Those are our bread and butter in this country. So let me ask you today, can you risk being generous? Can you risk to gain? That's the question at hand. While pride and selfishness, the American core values, are speaking in your left ear, let me speak this in your right ear. We don't own a single thing on this planet. And when you are in heaven, you will not be remembered as you will be in America. You see, in America, we remember people for fame, for popularity, for money. But in heaven, you won't be remembered for any of those things. In heaven, you won't be remembered for what you have, how much you amassed on this planet. What you'll be remembered for is what you gave away, what you gave to others, how much you cared about them to give to them. So the challenge is simple. Just do everything that America's not doing. Be the different guy. Be the different gal. Be the person who is willing to risk anything to be generous so that everyone can gain.